Hello, everyone. I'm Jody Salerno, and welcome back to the Range of Reality. If this is your first time joining me, I'm really glad you're here. This podcast isn't about living in fear, it's about living aware. Because the truth is, most dangerous situations don't happen out of nowhere. They leave warning signs. The problem is, nobody ever teaches us how to recognize them. Today, we're going to have a conversation about something I wish we didn't have to talk about. Not because it's unpleasant, and certainly not because it's entertaining, but because it's important. Over the last few years, we've all seen the videos, crowds taking over intersections, concerts where panic spreads faster than anyone understands why, people running, businesses locking their doors, parents grabbing their children, police trying to restore order. Sometimes those situations end with nothing more than confusion. Sometimes they end with damaged property. And sometimes they even end with families whose lives are changed forever. It's been making headlines all over the country. Parents worried, businesses frustrated, police departments overwhelmed, and a lot of good kids making some really bad decisions. They're being called teen takeovers. Maybe you've heard the phrase and thought, that's happening somewhere else. But here's the thing, it's happening in cities big and small. It's happening in shopping malls, downtown districts, parks, beaches, movie theaters, entertainment districts. And just a few weeks ago, it happened right here in the Pittsburgh area. Hundreds of teenagers, around 400, were brought together through social media. Very few were from the area. Most had traveled from outside the city. Businesses suddenly found themselves overwhelmed. A nearby department store locked its doors. Police officers became heavily outnumbered. Dispersal orders were ignored. Pepper spray was eventually used. Some of the teenagers even ran onto the busway, creating another dangerous situation entirely. And here's the part that stuck with me. The police chief pointed out something most people never think about. When dozens of officers are tied up handling one massive crowd, who's answering the domestic violence call? Who's responding to the crash across town? Who's helping the elderly person having a medical emergency? One event creates a ripple effect throughout the entire community. So that's why we're talking about this today. Not because I want you to be afraid, because I want you to know what to look for. When those stories make the news, people usually ask, how did that happen? Today, I want to ask a different question. How do we keep from becoming a part of it? That's really what this episode is about. Not fear, not panic, not living your life looking over your shoulder. It's about awareness. I've spent a lot of time, more than 22,000 students in over 11 years, teaching people how to recognize danger before it becomes obvious. One thing I've learned is this: the safest people I know aren't the strongest, the fastest, or the toughest. They're usually the people who notice something changing long before anybody else does. That's a skill. And the good news is skills can be learned. When I talk about situational awareness, people sometimes think I'm encouraging them to become suspicious of everyone around them. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, I believe exactly the opposite. I think most people are good. I've believed it my entire life. Most families are just trying to enjoy a Saturday afternoon. Most teenagers are simply spending time with friends. But good people can end up in bad situations without ever intending to. Because circumstances change, and they usually change much faster than people expect. Here's something I learned years ago that has stayed with me throughout my career. People don't usually get into trouble because they made one terrible decision. They get into trouble because they made several small decisions that seemed harmless at the time. They stayed a little longer, walked a little closer, ignored a feeling they couldn't quite explain. They assumed someone else knew what was going on. None of those decisions sound dangerous by themselves, but together, they can place someone in the middle of a situation they never intended to be a part of. That's what I hope today's conversation helps prevent. So imagine we're sitting across the table from one another with a cup of coffee between us. I'm not giving a lecture. I'm simply sharing some things I've learned over the years, some from teaching, some from watching people, and some from making my own mistakes. Danger almost never introduces itself. It whispers first. Most people think violence looks like someone pulling out a weapon. It doesn't. Violence usually begins long before that, with body language, with changes in behavior, with little things that by themselves don't seem important. The problem is, most of us aren't looking. So let me paint you a picture. It's Friday night. You've had a long week. You decided to meet your family at the mall, maybe grabbing dinner, maybe shopping. The kids are laughing. People are carrying shopping bags. Music's playing overhead. Nothing feels unusual. You walk by the food court and notice a group of teenagers. No big deal, right? Then another group arrives. Still nothing unusual. Then another. They're not shopping. They're standing. They're looking at their phones. They're looking around. They're checking their screens again. Most people wouldn't think twice, but if you've trained yourself to recognize pre-incident indicators, your brain should already be asking, why are they here? Not because they're teenagers, but because their behavior doesn't match everyone else's. They're waiting for something or someone. One of the biggest misconceptions about situational awareness is that you're looking for bad people. You're not. You're looking for behavior that doesn't fit. Dangerous people don't walk around wearing signs that say, I'm a threat. They blend in, and behavior almost always changes before the event does. Let's watch this unfold minute by minute because that's how these events usually happen. About 30 minutes before anything makes the news, there are clues. A handful of teenagers near an entrance. No shopping bags, no parents, no destination. Every minute or two, another one joins them. Maybe at this point, I wouldn't think that was odd either. They're teenagers, they gather, that's normal, right? But here's where I start paying attention. They aren't interacting with the environment. They're interacting with each other and their phones. They're waiting. 20 minutes go by, the group that started with 8 is now 25. Then 40. Nobody seems surprised they're meeting. Nobody asks, hey, where have you been? They simply walk into the group as though they know exactly where everyone should be. That's your first clue. This wasn't spontaneous. It was planned. Somewhere, somebody sent out a message, a Snapchat location, an Instagram story, a group chat, a TikTok. However it happened, dozens of people now know exactly where they're supposed to be. 15 minutes out, people stop spreading through the mall. They stay concentrated. They're almost orbiting an invisible point. Heads stay down. Eyes stay on the phones. Every few seconds, someone glances up towards the entrance. Then they look back down. They're waiting for a signal. 5 minutes later, the energy changes. You don't hear it first, you feel it. If you've ever walked into a room after an argument ended, you know exactly what I mean. Nobody has to tell you something happened. Conversations get shorter. People look in the same direction. More phones come out. Someone starts jogging. A few others follow. Another group appears from a different entrance. This is the point where I want you to make a decision. Not 5 minutes from now. Not after you figure out what's happening. Right now. Leave. Not because you're afraid, because your window to leave calmly is closing. Leaving early doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you smart. Emergencies have traffic jams at exits. Everybody wants to leave at exactly the same moment. The smartest people are already halfway to their car while everyone else is pulling out their phones asking, what's going on? Now imagine you ignored your instincts. You're still standing there telling yourself, I'm sure it's nothing. Then someone yells. Nobody knows why. Half the crowd turns. The other half starts recording. A few people begin running, and here's one of the strangest things about human nature. When people see other people running, they run too, even with no idea what they're running from. Our brains are wired to copy the people around us during uncertainty. It's a survival instinct. Unfortunately, it can also create panic. Parents grab children, bags hit the floor, someone trips, another stops to help. The people behind them push harder, not knowing why everyone is stopped. That's how stampedes begin, not because everyone is evil, but because everyone is scared. I want to talk about a story from my own life. Years ago, I was at a community event. Nothing dramatic was happening. Families were eating, kids were laughing, music was playing. Then I noticed something. Not one thing, but several little things. A few people stopped and looked toward the parking lot. Then a few more. A security officer changed directions and began walking with purpose. An employee stepped outside and looked towards the same area. If you'd walked in at that exact moment, you probably wouldn't have noticed anything, but I did. Not because I had special information, but because the atmosphere has changed. I looked at my kids and I quietly said, I think it's time for us to head out. One of them said, why? What's happening? My answer was simple. I don't know. And I don't think we need to wait around to find out. Maybe someone overreacted. Maybe security handled whatever was developing. I'll never know. And I'm perfectly okay with that. I've never driven home thinking, I really wish I'd stayed longer to see if something bad happened. Getting home safely has never disappointed me. And that's the mindset I want you to have, not fear. Quiet confidence. Confidence says, I don't need all the answers before I make a good decision. Panic freezes people. Confidence moves them. One of the biggest misconceptions about situational awareness is that it's about spotting danger. It isn't. It's about recognizing change. Think about your own neighborhood. If you walk outside this evening, you'll probably notice if a car you've never seen is parked in front of your house. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's different. Our brains are constantly comparing what we're seeing to what we expect to see. And most of the time, we don't even realize we're doing it. That's why people describe intuition by saying, I don't know why, but something just felt off. I pay attention when people tell me that. In fact, I pay attention when I tell myself that. Because intuition isn't magic, it's pattern recognition. Your brain noticing something before you've consciously figured out what it means. It doesn't always tell you what's wrong, but it often tells you something isn't right, and that's enough. You don't need evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. You need to ask yourself one question. What's the smartest decision I can make right now? Not the bravest, not the toughest, but the smartest. And sometimes the smartest decision is simply walking away. It sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things for people to actually do because human beings are curious. If two people stop and look across the street, pretty soon a third stops, then a fourth, then 10 more. Before long, you've got a crowd watching something and half of them have no idea why they're standing there. Psychologists call it social proof. When we don't know what to do, we look at everyone else. Most of the time, that's helpful. It keeps society moving, but every now and then it works against us. Think about the interstate. Traffic slows to a crawl. You finally work your way through, and what do you find? A minor accident. Maybe the emergency's already been cleared, yet traffic's backed up for miles because everybody slowed down to look. Now imagine that same behavior inside a shopping mall. Someone hears yelling. A few people walk towards the sound. Someone pulls out a phone. Within 2 minutes, 50 people have gathered around something they don't understand, not because they want trouble, because they want to know what's happening. Why are we so determined to move towards uncertainty instead of away from it? I think part of the answer is that we believe we'll know when it's time to leave and that we'll see danger before it reaches us. The problem is, life doesn't always give us that much notice. Danger has a way of developing quietly, and it rarely announces itself. And phones, pulling one out has become almost automatic. Think about how many people witness an emergency now, and the first thing they do is start recording. We've almost conditioned ourselves to believe our job is to capture the moment instead of surviving it. I want you to ask yourself, is your goal to get views or to get home? Those are two different priorities. When dozens of people stop walking to film, everyone behind them stops too. Movement slows. Escape routes clog. People start pushing. Now panic has another ingredient, congestion. I've seen surveillance footage where the crowd itself became more dangerous than whatever started the problem. People trip. Children get separated. Someone drops a stroller. Suddenly nobody's moving, and that's exactly where injuries happen. Crowds don't have to become violent to become deadly. So here's my advice. Put the phone away. Your camera isn't going to protect you. Your awareness will. Every crowd has an emotional temperature. Most of the time it's relaxed. People smile, they wander, they browse, then almost instantly the atmosphere changes. The laughter changes. Conversations get shorter. People look in the same direction. That uneasy feeling starts creeping into your stomach. I want you to trust that feeling. People tell me, I don't know why I felt uncomfortable. Good. You don't need to know why. Your subconscious notices things before your conscious mind catches up. It sees facial expressions, tension, unusual movement, changes in voices, and processes all of it faster than you can even explain it. Don't argue with it. I'm probably overthinking this. I don't want to embarrass anyone. I've heard those sentences more times than I can count. Don't be embarrassed to leave. Be grateful you had the opportunity. Nobody who safely walked away from a dangerous situation has ever called me and said, Jody, I really regret leaving too early. But I've talked to plenty of people who wished they'd left 5 minutes sooner. Here's something I want to say clearly. Don't wait until you're certain. You don't need proof to leave. I'd rather be wrong 100 times than right once when it comes to my safety. If I leave a shopping center and later find out nothing happened, fantastic. I lost 10 minutes of shopping. But if I ignore every warning sign because I don't want to look silly, the consequences can be far worse. And that's a trade I'm never willing to make. One of my favorite sayings has become this: don't investigate, evacuate. And people laugh when I say it, mostly because it rhymes. But they remember it. And that's exactly why I say it that way. Because under stress, your brain isn't looking for a long speech. It's looking for something simple. Create distance. Think clearly. Go home. Not to prove you're brave, not to find out what happened, not to get the perfect video. Go home. Everything else can wait. Now, let's say you're already inside somewhere where things start unfolding: a restaurant, a movie theater, a store. The first thing to do is to stop chasing information. This is where people get into trouble. They hear yelling outside, and instead of moving away, they move toward the window. Curiosity is completely normal, but it can put you in exactly the wrong place. If employees start locking doors, don't stand at the front windows, move further inside. If stores start pulling down security gates, don't stand in the doorway watching. Either leave immediately if you have a safe path, or move deeper into the store, away from large glass windows and entrances. Glass is not your friend. We've seen people injured because glass shattered around them from a thrown object, from gunfire, from people crashing into storefronts trying to escape. Distance and barriers matter. And parking lots create their own challenge. Your instinct says, I've got to get back to my vehicle. Ask yourself one question first. Can I safely get there? If yes, leave calmly. Don't run unless you absolutely have to, because running can create panic in the people around you. But if the crowd is already between you and your vehicle, forget the vehicle. I know that sounds strange. Maybe it's a brand new car. Maybe your purse is inside. But none of that matters if reaching it puts you in danger. Cars can be replaced. People can't. So many people get hurt because of the words, I'll just go back for my purse. I'll just grab my bags. I'll just see what's happening. Nothing you own is worth gambling your life over. And if you're already inside your car and the lot is filling up, patience matters. Don't lay on your horn. Don't yell out the window. Don't challenge anyone. Don't make eye contact with someone who's already angry. Your goal isn't to win an argument, it's to leave safely. If traffic's moving, move with it. If it's stopped and people are surrounding vehicles, lock your doors, keep your windows up, and stay aware. If there's a safe way to turn around and leave another way, take it. If not, stay calm. People feed off emotion. If you become aggressive, the situation often escalates. And one more thing worth naming, rumors. Crowds thrive on them. Somebody yells, he's got a gun. Nobody knows if it's true. And within seconds, hundreds of people believe something that may or may not happen. Social media does the same thing. A 10-second video with no context becomes the whole story to the entire internet. So be careful. Don't let social media become your reality. Let it remind you to verify, think critically, and make decisions based on what you can actually observe. And then that brings me back to something much simpler, body language. Your eyes are one of the greatest safety tools you'll ever have. Watch people's hands. Watch where they're looking. Watch whether someone is focused on shopping or focused on something else. Look for the person who keeps scanning, the group that suddenly goes quiet, the people repeatedly checking their phones and looking toward the same spot. Those aren't guarantees anything bad is about to happen. They're clues. And clues give you time. Time gives you choices, and choices keep you safe. I often compare it to meteorology. Meteorologists don't wait until the tornado's in the parking lot to issue a warning. They watch the conditions, the wind, the pressure, the patterns. You can do the same thing with people. You won't predict every bad situation. Nobody can. But you'll see a lot more than you do today. Keep your head on a swivel, and that doesn't mean looking nervous. It means continuing to observe. Every few seconds, look left, look right, glance behind you. Ask 3 simple questions. Where's my nearest exit? Has anything changed? If I needed to leave right now, which direction would I go? People become fixated on one threat, an argument 50 yards away. Every phone's pointed at it, and never notice someone running behind them or another group forming near the exit they were planning to use. So don't let the obvious distraction blind you from the path disappearing behind you. Everything we've covered matters even more when you're responsible for someone else, when you have your family with you. Children don't read crowds the way adults do. They see excitement, not danger. If you're with your kids, your job is to become the calmest person in the room. Don't yell, don't scream, run. Children borrow your emotions, and if you panic, they panic. Instead, take their hand, get low so they can hear you. Look them in the eye and say something simple. We're leaving now. No debate, no explanation. No stopping to see what's happening. If they're small enough to carry, pick them up, carry them. If they're old enough to walk, keep them beside you, not behind you, and don't let go of their hand. The moment you decide to leave with any group, kids, grandkids, friends, become a leader. Leadership doesn't require a loud voice. It requires a calm one. Walk over to the people you're with. Don't yell across the food court. Don't assume they'll follow. Go to them. Make eye contact and say something simple. "We're leaving, stay with me, and we'll talk in the car." That's it. No speeches, no long explanations. Stress makes complicated instructions almost impossible to remember. Simple ones, people remember. And here's a habit I'd love to see become ordinary. Before you ever walk into a crowded place with your family, have a plan. Not because you're expecting trouble, but because planning reduces panic. Where did we park? If we get separated, where will we meet? What's another way out besides the front door? That's 30 seconds. Most people never have those conversations until the day they wish they had. Now, let me talk directly to parents for a minute and then to the teenagers who might be listening, because I think both groups have more in common than they realize. If you're a parent, I know something about you already. Whether your kid's 8 or 18 or 48, you never stop being their parent. That little voice inside you hoping they make it home safely never goes away. We don't retire from worrying. We just get better at hiding it. So let me ask you, when was the last time you and your son or daughter talked about situational awareness? Not crime, not politics, not the evening news, just awareness. One simple question. If something doesn't feel right, what are you going to do? If they say, I don't know, that's okay. Now you have the chance to help them think it through before they're ever standing in a crowded mall trying to make that decision under pressure. You don't wait until your child is sliding across an icy road to teach them to drive. You prepare them first and then hope they never need it. This is no different. If your teenagers are old enough to go somewhere without you, they're old enough to have a safety plan. Don't just say, be careful. That's too vague. Ask them real questions. What would you do if someone suddenly started running? What if your friends wanted to stay, but you felt uncomfortable? Where would you meet if you got separated? Who are you calling first? What if your phone battery dies? We practice fire drills before there's a fire. We wear seatbelts before there's an accident. Personal safety works the same way. Preparation happens before the emergency, not during it. And here's something I'd love for every parent listening to say to their kids. You have my permission to leave. Call me. I will come get you. No questions asked. Leave the party. Leave the mall. Leave the concert. Leave the group. If something inside you says this doesn't feel right, I don't want you standing there wondering whether I will be upset with you if you left early. I want you wondering why everyone else is still standing there. I don't care if your friends stay. I don't care if everybody laughs at you. I care that you come home. I'd rather have somebody call you boring than have your parents have to identify you at a hospital. Young people often think courage means standing their ground. As adults, we sometimes teach that. We celebrate toughness. We admire the person who doesn't back down. There are times standing your ground matters, but there are other times when wisdom means walking away. And one of the greatest lessons we can teach our kids is knowing the difference. Walking away from unnecessary danger isn't quitting. It's choosing your future over your pride. Now, if you're a teenager listening, can I have a few minutes, just you and me? Most of the opinions about your generation come from people who spend very little time actually talking with you. So I'd rather have a conversation. I don't think your generation's the problem. I think you're growing up in a world that moves faster than any generation before it. When I was young, if something happened across town, we didn't hear about it until the next day. Today, your phone tells you before it's even over. One post, one live stream, and suddenly hundreds of people know exactly where something is happening. It can also create incredible pressure. Pressure to be there, pressure not to miss out, pressure to have the story everyone's talking about tomorrow. I understand that more than you might think, because even though the technology has changed, people haven't changed nearly as much. Every generation wants to belong. Every generation wonders if they're missing something exciting. The details change, human nature doesn't. So the next time somebody says, come on, let's go see what's happening, pause just for a second and ask yourself one question. Why? What am I hoping to gain? What am I risking? Is this really worth it? Most of the time, you'll realize there's nothing there worth risking your safety for. If somebody sends you a message that says, everybody's meeting at the mall tonight, it'll be fun, nothing's going to happen, ask one question. Who's actually in control? If nobody knows who's organizing it, if everybody's saying, I don't know, but everyone's going, that's your answer. You don't need to be there. Because once hundreds of people show up, nobody's in control anymore. Not the kids, not security, not even the police for those first few minutes. And those first few minutes are the most dangerous. One fight, one thrown bottle, one rumor that someone has a gun, that's all it takes. The crowd doesn't stop to verify, it reacts. And when crowds react, good people get hurt. Not because they did anything wrong, but because they happened to be standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sometimes the strongest person in the group isn't the loudest, it's the one who says, "Guys, this doesn't feel right. I'm heading out." And you might be surprised. Someone else may be thinking the exact same thing, just waiting for one person to say it first. Be that person. You never know whose life you might influence simply by making a smart decision. And I promise you, your friends aren't going to be standing next to you if something goes wrong. They'll be running too. Don't let one bad decision become the story that changes your life. Real confidence isn't following the crowd, it's being willing to walk away. Your value has nothing to do with how close you get to the excitement. It's not measured by the videos on your phone or the story you can tell on Monday morning. Your value comes from your character, your judgment, and the decisions you make when nobody else is thinking clearly. Those are the moments that define you, not the crowd, not the noise, you. Now, I want to be clear about something because it's easy to point fingers here. It's easy to blame teenagers or social media or parenting. And while those conversations matter, they aren't the question I ask myself. The question I ask is, what can I control? I can't control what somebody posts online or whether a crowd decides to gather or the decisions other people make. But I can control whether I'm paying attention, whether I ignore my instincts, whether I stay after my brain has already told me it's time to go. That's empowering because personal safety has never been about controlling everyone else. It's about controlling your own decisions. And one thing I want to make sure never gets lost in a conversation like this, awareness and paranoia are not the same thing. Paranoia expects something bad every time you leave the house. Awareness simply recognizes that life is unpredictable. I don't want you walking into every mall looking for danger or sitting in a restaurant wondering where every possible threat might come from. That's exhausting and it's no way to live. I want you to go to the concert, take your grandkids to the carnival, shop with your spouse, go to the football game, live your life, make memories. Just don't stop paying attention. Awareness isn't something you turn on when you're afraid, it's something you quietly practice every day. The same way you buckle your seatbelt without thinking about a crash. The more you practice it, the less effort it takes until eventually you don't even think about it. You simply notice things. As we get ready to wrap up, I want to leave you with three things, just three. Because if you remember these, they'll stay with you, whether you're walking through a mall, watching a parade, or just spending an afternoon with people you love. The first, pay attention to the atmosphere, not just the people. Environments tell stories. Imagine you're in a restaurant, everything feels normal. Then, without anyone making an announcement, the conversations die down. People look toward the front windows. A server stops and just watches. The manager heads towards the entrance. Nobody's explained anything, but you can feel it. That's what I want you to notice, not because you're looking for danger, because you're paying attention to change. Awareness isn't about solving the mystery, it's about recognizing it. The second thing is leave early. It sounds almost too simple, but simple doesn't mean unimportant. If you're wondering whether it's time to leave, it probably is. Think about airports. Leave a little early and you wait 15 extra minutes at the gate. Leave a little late and you're sprinting through the terminal. A little margin creates a lot of peace. There's only one you. Protect that. And the third, and maybe the most important, your goal is to get home, not to have the best story, not to get the best video, not to prove you're fearless. Somewhere along the way, we started believing every experience had to become a picture or a post. Sometimes the best memory you'll ever make is the one you never had to explain. The quiet drive home. Everyone's safe. Everyone already arguing about where to get dinner. Nobody remembers the sale you missed or the concert you left 20 minutes early. But your family will always remember that you were there for their birthdays, graduations, the ordinary Tuesday evenings around the table. That's what matters. Everything else is just noise. And before I go, I want to leave you with one small exercise for this week. The next few places you go, the grocery store, restaurant, ball game, church, wherever life takes you, do three things. First, find two exits. If your primary exit is blocked, what's your backup? Second, take 10 seconds and simply observe the people around you. Not to judge them, just to notice. Who's moving with purpose? Who's standing around without one? Has anything changed since you walked in? And third, ask yourself one question. If something happened right now, how would I leave? That's it. You don't have to become anxious. You don't have to spend the rest of the day looking over your shoulder. In fact, the opposite's going to happen. Once you've taken those 30 seconds, you relax because you've already answered the question. You've already taken a mental snapshot. Now your mind's free to enjoy the people you're with. That's what awareness does. It doesn't steal your peace, it gives you peace. You can trust people and still pay attention. You can enjoy life and still have a plan. Those ideas aren't in conflict. They complement each other because situational awareness isn't about becoming suspicious. It's about becoming intentional. Years ago, someone asked me what the most important self-defense skill is. They expected me to say something like how to throw a punch or use a firearm or escape an attacker. I said the most important self-defense skill is making good decisions before you ever need to defend yourself. Because once you're in the fight, once you're running, once people are screaming, your options have already been limited. The best decisions happen long before any of that. They're made when you notice something doesn't feel right and you leave. They're made when you decide that something what's going on isn't as important as getting home. Those decisions don't make the news. Nobody applauds them, but they save lives every single day. If this episode helps one parent have a conversation with their teenager tonight, if it helps one teenager decide to walk away from a crowd that doesn't feel right, if it helps one family think about an exit before they ever need one, then this conversation has been worth every minute. We don't always get to choose the circumstances we find ourselves in, but we almost always get to choose how we respond. And I hope that after today, you'll respond with calm, with confidence, and with wisdom. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. There are thousands of podcasts you can be listening to right now, and the fact that you've chosen this one means more to me than you probably realize. If today made you stop and think, do me one favor, share it with someone you care about, your spouse, your best friend, your son or daughter heading off to college, a grandparent, anyone who spends time in crowded places. Not because I'm chasing downloads, but because these are conversations that can quietly make a difference. If you've been enjoying Range of Reality, I'd also appreciate if you follow the podcast and leave a review. It helps more people find these conversations. Until next time, I'm Jody Salerno from Range of Reality. Take care of each other. Trust your instincts. Live your life. Stay aware, stay prepared, and remember, the safest fight is the one you never have to be in. Until next time.